Hi, welcome to a new video. Today we have the full review of the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Let's begin. Algo atractivo. This year, it seems to me that Apple has attracted more attention by a radical change in design and the incorporation of expected improvements in iPhone, so it could be a very attractive iPhone compared to the rest. Its launch price in Mexico for the most basic unit has been 30,999 pesos in this Pro Max model. I remind you that the slightly smaller Pro model is also available, which will be slightly cheaper. On the screen, you observe the reference price in dollars, more or less to get an idea. But keep in mind that the prices here are not the same as over there. It is very evident that at this price point, it competes in the highest segment against the most powerful flagship models. Without a doubt, the iPhone will always serve as a benchmark, even though it has been surpassed in certain aspects by some competitors. So let's take a look. We're unsure what it offers, but a positive is its widespread distribution, making it easy to find in any store. Let's begin with the design, as the evolution here is impressive. We see very thin bezels on the front, giving a super modern feel. The front is protected with Ceramic Shield 2, a new generation compared to the iPhone 16 Pro Max. According to Apple, it offers triple the scratch resistance, making it robust in this aspect. On the right side, we can see the power button, along with the camera button. We've already wondered about its usefulness, but it remains part of this generation. This allows for adjusting certain camera settings, although using the on-screen buttons will likely be more convenient. Nevertheless, the frames here are crafted from aluminum, and in this particular case, they are directly connected to each other. With the phone's back, it features aluminum frames and an aluminum body, which we'll discuss a bit later. At the top, due to its aluminum body, there's a small section aiding antenna connectivity. It oddly resembles where the Apple Pencil attaches on iPads, but here, no accessory will attach. On the left side, there's a customizable action button, press and hold to perform a function. Interestingly enough, it still supports only a single action when you press and hold it. I would really love to see Apple enable the option of 1, 2, or even 3 taps, in addition to holding down to have a wide variety of options on it. Unfortunately, it is more limited as it stands. Next, we come across the volume buttons. And finally, at the bottom, we are going to find the speaker and microphones, which have exactly the same design to maintain a symmetrical feel with the USB-C port. As you noticed, I didn't mention a SIM card tray, because in Mexico, the United States, and other countries, only the eSIM version is available. This means you won't need a physical SIM card, but instead, you'll use a service via a QR code that you can scan. Some carriers provide eSIM installation without QR codes, but this varies by implementation. The reality of this situation is that we are dealing with a virtual service, in a manner of speaking, which can provide you with significantly greater comfort. I emphasize this especially when you are planning to travel, because you no longer need to physically visit a store to purchase a SIM card. Instead, you can conveniently buy it online and scan it to add it, and that's all there is to it. Moreover, the absence of a SIM card tray means more room for the battery, which is crucial, but we will discuss that in more detail later on. For now, let's return to discussing the design theme. In this instance, we observe a thickness of 8.75 millimeters. This means that the thickness has increased compared to the previous generation. Additionally, the weight has also gone up, now reaching 233 grams. It's interesting because, for instance, Samsung is making a significant effort to make their cell phones thinner and lighter. Meanwhile, Apple appears not to be following this trend. To that very same dynamic. On the back, we are going to discover a substantial portion made from aluminum construction, which includes the camera area. However, if you haven't heard, this particular area of the camera module is quite sharp, and it can be very prone to causing the paint to peel, so you must be especially careful with it. It is a device that, in general, you will likely need to use with a case. The design of this camera module, featuring a large rectangular window, is quite reminiscent in various ways of cell phones. A Poco brand of Xiaomi, which I don't like so much. In general, the aesthetic design of the back cover to me, I did not like, but that is a matter of personal taste. The truth of the case is that it looks very different from the last generation, and that could be one of its most attractive aspects for those who like to pretend and make it look like they have the latest iPhone. On the back cover here, you'll find a large rectangle with rounded corners made of glass, featuring the first generation ceramic shield. When compared to the matte glass from the previous generation on the back cover, it is 4 times more resistant to shocks. Therefore, I believe it is a device that will have good durability, meaning it won't break easily. However, it might be more prone to getting scratched, and of course, the paint could peel off. That's the reason I emphasize that you'll definitely need to use this device with a case. They didn't include a full aluminum body. Instead, they added this glass piece to enable magnetic wireless charging, which we will discuss later. The device comes with IP68 resistance. The device comes with IP68, offering enhanced water and dust resistance. It's a unique IP68 supporting greater depths than the standard IP68 on most devices. However, it's worth noting that many Chinese manufacturers are now using IP69, with an even greater and significantly higher level of resistance. To wrap up the design section, I want to mention that I have the edition in a vibrant cosmic orange color. However, it's also available in a sleek silver and a rich deep blue. Interestingly enough, it doesn't come in as wide a range of colors as you might find, for instance, with Samsung. They provide exclusive colors through their online stores and offer a broader palette of options. Let's discuss the screen, where this device excels. It's 6'9" inches wide, thanks to its thin bezels. Plus, it has a resolution of 2868 by 1320 pixels. The resolution is higher than what we would be used to, so all content will look really very sharp, reaching a pixel density of 457 pixels per inch. Text with small fonts and very subtle details in multimedia elements will be appreciated perfectly through this screen, which, by the way, integrates OLED technology. Apple names it Super Retina XDR. The manufacturer doesn't provide any color calibration options for the screen, so you'll rely on the system's own calibration, which is actually quite good. Remember, it also includes True Tone for automatic white balance adjustment, giving us colors that match the surrounding environment. You have the option to turn it on or off. Naturally, since it is an OLED screen, it provides us with vibrant colors and high contrast, making the display exceptionally good. Keep in mind that it also offers excellent viewing angles regarding the color display of the screen itself. Interestingly, this time it includes an anti-reflective coating, which was absent in previous generations, making this a new feature. It enables you to steer clear of reflections coming from windows or objects that are positioned behind you with lots of light. It does it well. It should be made clear though, Galaxy S25 Ultra still has the best anti-reflective finish, so we're not seeing the industry's top of the line here, but improves on most devices. Plus it offers a peak brightness of 3000 nits. You are truly going to vividly visualize the contents in an intense and brutal way, and in conjunction with the displays, XDR and HDR display. The display has the ability to illuminate not only the content you capture in your photographs and videos, but also the series and multimedia content will look spectacular through this screen, as it is able to illuminate with more intensity some areas of the photographs or videos, and others with less intensity to represent more realistically the lights and shadows of real life. It's great because, I insist, it works with content from this phone, Instagram, YouTube, even Netflix with Dolby Vision and more platforms. You're also going to have these capabilities, and with respect to the minimum brightness, in this case you can go down to a nit of brightness, nothing more. That's also something spectacular, though oddly enough, when you lower the brightness of the screen, you are going to notice that it is still a remarkably high brightness, so it might be a bit confusing how to lower the brightness to lower levels. Enter accessibility settings, then display to enable reduced white point. The screen will have low brightness, useful for evening use. This generation also has a smoothen option. Pulse dimming of the screen. This option allows to dim the screen by voltage and not by flicker. To explain it in a very simple way, since most OLED screens only lower their brightness by dimming the pulses, which can cause an annoying flickering effect in some cases, but they do it so that the colors are still represented well even at low brightness. However, if you wish to enable the option to reduce the white point, you must use screen pulse width modulation for dimming. Therefore, if you are highly sensitive to flicker, you won't be able to use extremely low brightness levels. However, I do appreciate that Apple has integrated this option, even though other manufacturers have opted to increase the rate of attenuation to a much higher level, which Apple still does not provide. Lastly, I want to remind you that this screen includes what Apple refers to as promotion. This means it can reach up to 120 Hz for ultra-fluid movements, or it can drop down to 1 Hz, ensuring that even when displaying static content like always on display or similar, this screen remains extremely efficient. Indeed, the screen is remarkable in terms of power consumption. We'll discuss that more later. So it is a screen that satisfies in almost every aspect. The only thing I'd wish for is more flexibility in adjusting the color calibration to match different user preferences. In the sound, we find stereo configuration, a speaker at the bottom, another in the earpiece area for calls, and I must tell you that it is one of the best we will find in the industry. It is a powerful sound, with good presence of bass frequencies, good clarity, good balance and amplitude. The truth is that it's definitely one of the best. Let's listen to a small test, but remember that it is not the same to listen to it live. Curiously, through software, Once more, it leaves us wanting a bit because it does not provide a general system equalizer, but rather only an equalizer for Apple Music. You will rely on each application to see if it includes an equalizer or not. Furthermore, regarding spatial sound functions, it will be restricted to when you have connected AirPods or compatible devices, aiming to give you a sense of even greater amplitude. And in the case of Dolby Atmos, it only works for Apple Music if you have a subscription. Therefore, I strongly insist that they significantly restrict the more advanced features. I believe this is something I would like to see implemented consistently throughout the entire system. Moreover, it also lacks an independent volume setting for each individual application. This means that if you have two applications playing audio simultaneously, you cannot lower the volume of just one application. This is a feature that we are seeing increasingly common in Android, and it is another feature that is not yet available here. You can set up the audio outputs to play certain things on a Bluetooth device while others play on the phone speakers, limiting the experience. However, it offers a maximum volume limit, allowing you to control how loud the phone plays audio. I don't find it very useful, but it's nice they add new options. I want to remind you that this device unfortunately does not come with a headphone jack, which was something we all anticipated. Now, regarding wireless audio codecs, you'll find yourself limited to using only Apple's own products. What this means is that, aside from the basic options, it supports an ALAC codec. This codec is Apple's proprietary technology for providing virtually lossless audio quality. Consequently, you can only experience high-resolution wireless audio if you decide to purchase AirPods or Beats headphones. No other headphones from any brand will have this feature. This experience, limiting yourself excessively, your choice. This is something that personally bothers me about Apple. They don't include the aptX codec, nor do they offer LDAC or LHDC. They restrict users to enjoying high-resolution audio only with their own products. As for the microphones, Apple integrates a total of 4. They claim these microphones are of studio quality, and truly, Apple offers configurations for calls to make them sound great, whether isolating the voice or leaving audio unfiltered. Additionally, within the video editor itself, you already know there's an audio mixing tool available. This allows you to alter the style of your microphone sound. You can choose to have it sound more in the foreground, or perhaps you prefer a studio quality sound. If you're aiming for an overall sound that's equalized similar to film, you have that option as well. These tools are quite useful when you're modifying recordings made with these microphones. But now, let's take a moment to hear how this microphone performs and behaves when placed in an environment similar to a concert, filled with lots and lots of ambient noise and sounds. This will give us a better understanding of its capabilities. Finally, in this section, the haptic engine is situated along the x-axis. It boasts impressive power. However, it's quite interesting to note that Apple is significantly lagging behind when it comes to fully utilizing this engine across all system navigation aspects. For instance, there are other manufacturers, such as Oppo, that provide a much more premium feedback experience in the hand. They achieve this by offering tactile responses when pressing various buttons, activating swipes, and performing more system actions. The iPhone has really lagged behind. And it doesn't offer that advanced feeling when it comes to software, even though the hardware itself is actually quite impressive with its powerful engine. The front camera is a 20mm with a new 18-megapixel sensor featuring an f1.9 aperture and autofocus. This camera has greatly improved from the last generation, now known as Center Stage. To open the camera quickly, we can use the camera button itself. In fact, that's one of the few uses for this button. Just hold it down to launch the camera rapidly. Within the camera settings, you have the option to decide what action this button will perform. For instance, you can choose whether a single press will launch the camera, or if you prefer 2 presses. It's up to you to determine the behavior that suits you best. Additionally, you can decide if you want the screen to be on or off when running the camera. This feature provides you with a very convenient and quick shortcut, allowing you to open the camera from any location on your device. You can decide if you want extra settings enabled while using the camera. Luckily, you can toggle it on and off, as it can sometimes be tricky. It's awkward holding the device because in portrait mode the button stays enabled. In contrast, Oppo's design disables it when held vertically, leaving only the capture function. Yet sliding doesn't adjust any parameters, so you'll want to disable this feature because it tends to become quite active and annoying while swiping. By doing so, you'll ensure that you have the best possible performance. So there you have it, the optimal performance setting. It also mentions that it would help us to lock the focus and exposure at certain points. As you notice, when you press without being in the camera, it opens the visual intelligence options to explore. Working together with the camera, there are accessibility options available in the camera control settings themselves. In fact, these settings offer various accessibility features. To know how hard you need to press, whether you want it to be firmer or lighter, and also the speed of the double press. Overall, I believe it offers excellent options to configure this button. I must emphasize that the main utility I find is the ability to open the camera very quickly. While other devices allow you to double press the power button, making it just a fraction of a second faster, having a quicker opening is beneficial. Now, from the iPhone, you are aware that this center stage camera is incredibly advanced because it not only allows us to have the traditional view that we have in all cell phones, but also a much wider view and even a view as if we rotate the cell phone, but without rotating the cell phone, it gives us very good amplitude. It's a truly wide camera, which is one of its main strengths. It's fantastic, this aspect. Also, it responds quickly and is agile, though it lacks the easy capture gesture with the palm or voice command. The experience remains limited. With the top button, you can choose zoom and auto-rotate options to configure it for more people to see the image. When you add it to your photo, the iPhone will automatically make the necessary adjustment for you. We'll also find a night mode option here, which only allows automatic or off settings, unlike other devices. The same goes for zoom. Here's another button for accessing the timer function, like 3, 5, or 10 seconds, and lets us enable or disable live photo, giving a short video of our photo for review. I can show it with various effects. Notice that it's not just the live photo that provides us with this video. We can also access the loop option, which creates a continuous feeling, making the video seem like it's always ongoing. With this subtle transition, we have the bounce effect, making the video appear to move back and forth. Overall, I believe it offers excellent options, unlike Android manufacturers who mainly provide us with the basic option. Here, we have many options. We can even disable the live photo feature, and that's it. Interestingly, the iPhone claims to be intuitive, but to me, it doesn't seem that way. If you press the button up here, the menu appears below. You might think pressing this button shows photo modes, but actually, you slide horizontally on the bottom bar to see the different modes. I believe it would be quite nice if, when you click on this button, all the available modes that we have here would show up as you scroll. Right now, it's a bit tedious to scroll through them one by one to switch between these modes. It would be great if, when you click on this button, the menu could appear at the top. Honestly, I don't find much sense in its current controls, but anyway, I just want to remind you that by holding down the button, start recording a short video, slide the button right to keep it going without stopping. If you want to take a burst shot, you need to slide this button over to the left side, and if you have the burst mode available on the front camera, you can access it. In the More Options menu, you will find the exposure compensation setting, which is always quite useful. It's right there at your fingertips, ready for you to use. If you've already enabled it, pay attention to the top where there's an option to easily reopen the controls with just a single tap. We'll also discover the Style section, which provides the option to switch between various types of color interpretation. This is particularly useful depending on your personal taste in selfies, especially if you wish to avoid editing them later. From the moment you capture your selfies, you have the ability to modify their color rendition. In our test, we naturally use the standard setting, which is the default configuration. In the lower left corner, we can find the button that enables the portrait photography settings. It's important to note that in this particular case, these settings only allow us to choose between various types of lighting. However, interestingly, there's no option to adjust the intensity. Although after capturing the picture, we do have the option to edit it and adjust the intensity level of the blur effect. In fact, within the photo editor itself, we once again have access to the various photo styles that were available even before taking the picture. Additionally, we have the live settings that allow us to select the precise moment of the photograph. If you wish to extract a moment from just before or right after the picture was taken, you can do so perfectly. This is something that can be highlighted, especially if you want to correct or adjust some specific moment within the photographs. By the way, you might be noticing here that it has this little button. This is because you can also take raw photos using the front camera. However, this button doesn't appear by default. You need to go here to the Format section to enable these Pro RAW features on the photo. This is because you can select from different types of formats if you want a super advanced photo. It's worth mentioning that the front camera is really one of the best you'll find in this segment. On the day, we are going to find super detailed images, very well balanced in color, and I remind you that being a camera with a square sensor, in this case, we are going to find a very good amplitude, both holding the device vertically and horizontally. In addition, in backlit situations, the preview looks excellent, and obviously the result when capturing these backlit photos is also very good. We find a good balance of light and shadow, although there's a somewhat more reddish hue than I'd prefer if I'm being very particular. The same applies to indoor scenarios. Notice that we observe a somewhat reddish tint, and we also notice a somewhat reduced level of detail. Honestly, this camera really requires excellent lighting to achieve the highest level of detail possible. Take a look, for instance, at the contrast with the photo taken using the main camera. The detail level is entirely different. So even though we are facing a good sea, in front is still not as good as a rear camera. For instance, take note of how at night the coloring tends to appear somewhat more reddish than I would have preferred in general. I believe that is one aspect I didn't appreciate as much about this camera. However, What I do appreciate is the impressive level of spaciousness it offers, and it handles noise more effectively than previous generations. Yet, in night backlight scenarios, which are the most challenging, you will still notice some noise and graininess returning. And clearly, the level of detail is not going to be significantly high. Thus, even in very complex situations, it is still surpassed by other Android competitors. However, where it performs the worst is in night portrait photography. These photos are truly lousy, really the worst we might find, comparable to a lower mid-range Android device. So unfortunately, these pictures appear excessively bad. During the day, portraits will have better detail and color quality, but it struggles to focus on foreground objects. As a result, the photos won't look very natural. Portrait photography with the front camera is actually a weak point for this device. On the back, there are 3 cameras. First, the 13mm ultra-wide with f-aperture. There's autofocus for macro capabilities and a 48-megapixel sensor. Additionally, we have the main 24mm camera featuring an f1.78 aperture, along with autofocus and optical stabilization. This camera comes with the same resolution on the sensor, allowing us to capture backcrops and photos of 24 megapixels in automatic mode. The sensor's zoom provides perspectives of 28, 35, and even 48 millimeters. Next, we have the 100mm camera with an f2.8 aperture, featuring autofocus and optical stabilization within the sensor, similar to the main camera. One of the new features is a 48-megapixel sensor, matching the others, unlike the simpler sensor in the previous generation. Interestingly, the lens provides less optical zoom, but thanks to the higher resolution sensor, you'll notice a significant improvement in zoom quality. Interestingly, the aperture has stayed the same. I would have liked to see some improvement in that area, especially since the focal length is now shorter. However, thanks to the addition of the high-resolution sensor, it can provide you with a perspective of up to 200 millimeters while still maintaining optical quality. Regarding the rear camera, we will notice a very good response time. Keep in mind that if you are very close to an object, the macro mode will automatically be enabled, and you have the option to turn it off if you wish, to force the device to use the main camera. However, when you are extremely close, it will transition to the ultra-wide camera to naturally enhance focus. In our testing while attempting to capture the number 3, we observed that the device somewhat anticipates the exact moment of our capture. We almost always succeeded in capturing just before the number 3. As you can observe, it includes the default live photo effects, which appear in burst shots. We could argue that it possesses an almost limitless burst capability. However, it does take nearly half a second to initiate, meaning it lacks immediate activation. Nevertheless, the interval between one photo and the next is minimal, allowing for the extraction of precise moments. There are occasions when it does exhibit a very aggressive jump. For instance, in this example, it took nearly half a second between one photo and the next, but generally speaking, the gap between them remains quite small. Just like with the front camera, we will have access to the exposure compensation and self-timer styles directly from this section, or by pressing the photo button, we can easily switch to other photography modes using this scroll. In fact, let me remind you that you have the ability to take spatial photographs, which will be viewable through the Apple Vision Pro. Of course, if you don't have the Vision Pro, it won't make much sense to use this option, but it's still a great feature to have. As I expected, you can use the camera button to switch between options. For instance, rotating between cameras is possible. Double tap it to toggle views. If you want to adjust zoom, blur effect, exposure or tone, you can change it directly with this camera control. Honestly, it can be a little confusing. I don't think it's something that you're going to use on a daily basis because all of those options can also be easily modified through buttons on the touch interface that are going to have a lot more space, and it's going to be a lot clearer. As you can see, the experience is still very minimalistic or simple depending on how you want to look at it. Personally, I like the devices to integrate as many options as possible. Here, the experience seems simpler. In the camera settings, you'll find extra options like enabling RAW photography. Turn on this button to switch and take RAW photos at 48 megapixels. However, there's no professional mode. You can only adjust exposure and focus using this small slider. You can also enable burst mode with the volume button if desired. Get here to smart options, which we'll try in a moment, and over here as well. The options available allow you to enable the composition grid or set a level to ensure the picture is perfectly straight. Additionally, it provides you with the options of the Fusion camera, which include cutouts within the sensor. If you wish to enable these additional cameras, take note that by pressing the 1x button once, we can switch over to the other 35mm views. Furthermore, we can actually configure in the settings if we prefer any of these views to be set as the default. If you prefer, for example, the photos with that classic 35mm appearance, you have the option to enable it right here. It also offers a fast shutter priority option. However, if you choose to disable it, this can potentially enhance the picture quality a bit more. The device, in a smart way, might suggest cleaning the lens, as these lenses often get stained. And when the lens is stained, trust me, the quality of the picture can really be affected. Ugly that occurs with any phone. Curiously, in this case, I did not get the suggestion. Although it is evident that the lens is muddy, I get the feeling that Samsung does a better job telling you when the lens is dirty. In this case, if the sign came out clean the front camera, but here on the rear camera, even though the lenses are already very smudged, it has not told me at any time clean the cameras or anything like that. That's why I'm telling you from now on, keep your cameras clean because, yes, the phone takes great pictures, but if the lens is dirty, even a great phone will take ugly pictures. For smart functions like scanning, note the iPhone can't do it from. In the main camera interface, there is just one button available that allows you to extract the text displayed on the screen in a digital format. Furthermore, you have the option to translate this text, enabling you to view it in your own language. By pressing and holding the camera button, you can access Apple Intelligence so that it will also... With the camera, you can do various things. For instance, you can have it ask questions about what it sees. You can set it to inquire directly to ChatGPT, which then provides a summary of the camera's view. Additionally, you can ask further questions like, I am Mexican. Which menu item would you recommend for my tastes? It observes and knows that it provides the necessary processing, and at this point, it is going to offer us its recommendations. Some seafood, and, well, these are options that show up in this menu, which was in another language. You could also look it up on the internet, so there are simply some clever options that you might be able to access through the camera. As I was mentioning earlier, it doesn't have a document scanner built directly into the camera itself, but it does have one available right in the Notes app or in the Files app. When you're creating a note, you can press attach the button to directly scan the document. It's not possible to use the ultra-wide camera, which is a feature I would have appreciated, but on the bright side, it does include the automatic capture functionality, and naturally, you have the ability to scan multiple pages for future use. Export and apply filters. The scanner appears to function well, in my opinion. Personally, I would really appreciate it if it were integrated directly into the camera app itself. What is currently available in the camera is the QR code scanner. He mentions that it operates quickly and efficiently. Therefore, for scanning QR codes, you don't need a separate app. But you can use the scanner from Notes, from Files, and even from Preview, which is actually a new app. Plus, you have the option to use it from the Shortcut app itself. So, it appears that the scanner functionality is integrated across a wide range of apps. The QR code scanner is fully integrated. Now, let's take a moment to thoroughly review the results that we observe in this camera system. The ultra-wide camera here is among the widest available on the market, which is something I personally appreciate a lot. In this particular instance, I believe it manages to control the natural distortions quite effectively, which can often be produced at the edges of a camera this wide. I genuinely think it performs admirably in that aspect. The main camera will, of course, see improvements, especially in terms of the level of detail it can capture. In this situation, you might notice a higher quality compared to the ultra-wide camera, so the two cameras won't be perceived at the same level of performance. However, as I mentioned, the quality is very good. It also provides a 2x cropping option, where you'll discover even more enhanced detail. Then we will need to move up to the 4x optical zoom, where naturally you'll also get a picture of good quality. In fact, up to 8x the device, through cropping of the sensor, can still maintain a good level of detail, although Apple gives it a more natural and less artificial touch, so to speak. That is, other manufacturers, especially Chinese, are going to optimize by artificial intelligence the details so that you see a photograph with even higher quality. But to make this even clearer, let me show you this next IM carousel. Once more, the ultra-wide camera shows slight distortions and chromatic aberration at the edges, although these are well masked. Next, we have the main camera, which is certainly the best among the three. Then we look at the 2x crop, and we're getting increasingly closer. Now, at 4x, we achieve 100% optical quality once again. When we reach 8x crop within the sensor, we aim to maintain optical quality, though we begin to notice a slight blur in certain areas. Here we have the image at 20x digital zoom. I believe it still looks quite good, and the maximum zoom is 40x. However, this is where you start to notice, for example, how other Chinese manufacturers optimize the details much more extensively. Although at the same time, the photograph might appear slightly artificial, therefore it's two entirely different approaches. Apple aims for more natural details. Now, let's take a look at another photo carousel. We are going through this process at a considerably higher speed. This is simply to allow you to observe firsthand the capabilities this camera possesses when adjusted to different focal length settings. It is important to note that this camera is not designed to be a specialist device for very long zooms. However, I believe that 40x is a suitable maximum zoom, particularly because it is genuinely honest in this instance. It won't exaggerate or artificially enhance details through AI. Yet, I think other manufacturers might provide more appealing outcomes with their much longer range zoom capabilities. Consider, for instance, that here we have letters which other manufacturers have the ability to optimize much better. There are even certain shapes from nature that these manufacturers can optimize more effectively. However, a significant area where other manufacturers may struggle considerably is when faces are involved. This is because their optimization techniques tend to fall apart. Artificial intelligence lacks the capability to generate artificial details of a face accurately. When it comes to Apple, because of having such a natural representation, you don't notice the drop in quality. You perceive it just as you do with other photographs. So, I emphasize it is a very high quality zoom, but it certainly won't be the device with the highest maximum quality zoom available on the market. It is still surpassed by several other devices. In scenes with backlighting, it performs quite well. In fact, the device performs remarkably well in this regard, even at various focal lengths. Perhaps with the 2x zoom crop, you might notice a faint beam of light around the face. This happens as it attempts to adjust the lighting in that specific area, which can make the result appear somewhat unusual. However, in the other settings, I believe it looks quite good. It's important to keep in mind that at 48x, we will need to remain very still to achieve better detail. Even a slight movement can lead to device results that aren't as pleasing. And observe now its behavior at night. Because the ultra-wide camera, the truth is that it falls apart practically. Many other Android flagships at night will achieve a much more attractive result at night. Here, Apple tries to eliminate noise, but at the same time eliminates many details. Intense blue artifacts appear in the darkest part. The truth is a very low-quality photograph compared to the price of this device. The primary camera has seen a significant improvement, yet I still believe it doesn't reach the level of excellence we've observed on some other devices. This is particularly noticeable since it struggles a bit to control the brightness of small lights that may appear during nighttime. When using the 2x zoom crop, it attempts to preserve the optical quality, and in this regard it performs well. However, with the 4x lens, once more the quality diminishes quite a bit, especially if there's a light source visible within the frame. And with the 8x, I'm not saying it creates very noticeable artifacts, but the truth is that it actually does. We will notice that even though there is a significant enhancement in the image processing that Apple implements, it still doesn't quite reach the level of what we observe in Chinese manufacturers with their Ultra models. When there isn't a light source present in the frame, the device might do a somewhat better job of enhancing the light capture. This was an overcast day with rain, so it's understandable that you don't see the sky completely dark. However, it seems to me that the main camera might give the impression of a photograph that's too artificial or perhaps too fake due to an excess of light. It wasn't really such a bright day as we were already into the night, and you'll notice that the sky appears too clear. The same situation occurs with the 2x crop, and with 4x it even resembles a daytime photo. So one positive aspect is that you have a really good amount of light coming in, which is great. However, it doesn't quite resemble a natural photograph, nor does it include any special mode to capture the photos as true to life as possible. When you watch with 8x again, the result remains quite similar. There's an abundance of light, which isn't necessarily bad, but if you are someone who appreciates very natural photography, you will observe that this camera might overexpose the elements a bit too much, especially at night. Let's now review the panoramic photography to give us more breadth. This is the main camera. Next, you're looking at the ultra-wide camera to give you more or less a perspective of the distances. And below is the result that we could have with a panoramic mode, where the photograph loses a little bit of contrast and color intensity. But fortunately, it is a photograph that still maintains a sufficiently high resolution. Both this device, panoramic photography, achieves a high level of quality, especially when you consider that you can use the panoramic photography mode together with the ultra-wide camera. When it comes to motion photography, it's important to note that the ultra-wide camera struggles to keep objects almost frozen. The main camera does show improvement in that respect, although it doesn't quite reach expert levels. However, even with the 2x crop, it performs well, avoiding distortions that are overly noticeable. With the telephoto camera, results get more complicated. At 8x, it's even worse. It's not great at freezing motion. For macro photography, this is the closest you get with the main camera, which lacks close focus. Using 2x digital zoom, you can get closer for detail. It's not bad, but this is the closest with the telephoto camera. In fact, the telephoto camera performs poorly in macro scenes. Unlike other manufacturers who incorporate macro abilities into their telephoto cameras for impressive outcomes, Apple has chosen to stick with their macro camera instead. Very short in this aspect, since even applying the 8x digital zoom with cropping on the sensor, we still see a distance still far away. For macro scenes, what you will need to use will be the ultra-wide camera that is automatically enabled with macro mode when it detects that you are very close to the objects, but the disadvantage is that being so close to an object, you end up covering a lot of lighting, so the result might not be optimal, unlike the macro mode. This is much better than tele-macro cameras on other Chinese flagships. So once more, Apple performs adequately, clearly doing well, though not the absolute best in the entire industry. When it comes to portrait photography, they excel, managing to detect the foreground effectively, maintaining objects in sharp focus. Even in areas with gaps, they successfully achieve the right defocus, and naturally, they allow us to capture portrait images from various focal lengths. In this case, you're looking at the picture with 2x digital zoom to get a perspective close to a 50mm lens, but where it looks even better is with the 4x lens, because the bokeh effect looks more intense. The camera provides a more natural look while maintaining excellent detection of both the foreground and the background. When it comes to portrait photography, it performs exceptionally well. During daytime, even without engaging portrait mode and simply utilizing the 4x zoom lens, you might observe that you can achieve these kinds of results with a completely natural blur effect. Pay attention, even the sections of the hair which are not artificially blurred will stay perfectly focused. However, you do need the background to be quite distant to achieve this particular effect. For instance, in this other photograph, when the background is distant, it creates a more pronounced blur effect. Similarly, with 8x, a comparable effect occurs. Therefore, for this kind of photography, even without using portrait mode, it can still be beneficial. However, it's important to note that other Chinese manufacturers often produce a more advanced and natural effect. So, I believe Apple, despite its progress, still has room for improvement. For artistic portrait photography, I've tested other far cheaper devices that, in the same scenario, deliver more appealing results. The iPhone performs poorly here. Apple really needs to enhance its night portrait photography, particularly for night portraits. Observe how, in this instance, while it creates a nice out-of-focus background effect, the face, hair, and other details are noticeably lacking. There's also some graininess and noise. Honestly, it's not that impressive in this aspect. I enjoy daytime portrait photography, but not at night. Now let's discuss the high-resolution modes, which let you capture 48-megapixel RAW photos with any of the three cameras. So here we're examining the ultra-wide camera. It definitely captures good detail, although it isn't the most spectacular option available. I believe the best choice for this kind of high-resolution photography would be the main camera. With this one, you can get in close and still notice the details very well. It's a camera that effectively utilizes the sensor information. And lastly, we have the telephoto camera, which also captures the details perfectly. And quite well. This is clearly in a well-lit setting. If there's less light, avoid using high-resolution mode. But here, I think you could achieve appealing results for video recording. This device you already know has always been very prominent, and in this case we will find capabilities up to 4K at 120 frames per second with Dolby Vision, although this is exclusive to the main camera. All cameras can record up to 4K at 60 frames per second, which is positive, but Xiaomi, for example, in its highest model, if it allows you to record in 4K at 120 frames per second with any of its cameras, so we are not in front of the most advanced in the industry. However, Apple is particularly notable for enabling you to record in ProRes RAW, a codec created by Apple. This codec provides you with extremely advanced control during post-production. You can record in Log 2, which allows for later coloring on the computer. Essentially, it offers you very professional features. For instance, it also provides compatibility with Genlock and timecodes, which are essential for sync multiple cameras simultaneously. This is designed for much larger productions and even allows you to record directly onto an external storage drive, because recording in such high quality would fill up the device's storage very quickly. However, these are certainly highlights for the video recording interface. You'll notice it shifts to an HDR view. Interestingly, in photo mode, it appears with normal brightness, but once you switch to record video, the screen's intensity increases since it's set to record in HDR. If this change bothers you, you'll need to head over to the camera settings and specifically choose the option to avoid recording in HDR. Now you will find it located here in Format and within the Record Video section. Besides the resolution options, you will need to disable HDR video. By doing this, the video will be recorded in SDR, and as a result, the preview will also display in SDR. Of course, HDR recording will look significantly more spectacular, but you do need compatible screens such as the iPhone screen anyway. From here as well, you have these resolution options. In the past, you needed to relocate this to the settings section, but fortunately they have now added that option, which I must say looks quite nice when viewed through the liquid glass. Similar to photography, there is a button for automatic macro mode. However, there aren't many additional options available. Here you'll find the action mode, which allows you to record video with enhanced stabilization, and you'll also find the dual camera mode here, which we will be discussing further. We'll discuss it later to analyze its behavior while filming a video. Take note that there is a button available to pause and resume your recording, and a button to take pictures. However, it curiously does not show us any animation to indicate that a picture has been taken. Also, observe that while it does integrate this slider to control the zoom, it does not include a button to turn the flash on or off, which seems very basic to me. Additionally, there is no button to switch to the front camera without having to stop your video recording. Before starting your recording, you must adjust everything. However, you can't incorporate more dynamic elements as they become noticeable. Basic functionality in this sense. By the way, this device can be varied. Its frames per second can be adjusted according to the light levels, or you have the option to choose no if you prefer it to fully reach the white balance setting. Table. You also have the option to lock the white balance, and trust me, this feature will be incredibly useful for maintaining consistent color while recording. This is particularly important because the iPhone's white balance can sometimes be a bit excessive. For instance, if I'm recording in one location and then suddenly move to a different scene with white elements, the color could change drastically. White, slightly differently. The white balance shifts in a manner. It's terrible. So I generally choose to enable this option to prevent any potential issues while recording my video. The iPhone lacks a dedicated professional recording mode that allows you to adjust multiple parameters during the recording process. However, within its settings, it does offer the option to record in a log format. This feature, of course, provides the capability to record using manual parameters, enabling more control over the recording settings. To record with manual settings, you'll need an app that supports manual recording. Individually, although fortunately, for instance, Blackmagic offers its own application called Blackmagic Camera. This app is also free, and if you have multiple manual parameters available while recording video, it can be quite useful. Moreover, there's the Final Cut application itself, which provides access to these kinds of professional parameters when you are capturing your video. So, even though the native camera itself lacks professional features, fortunately, as I mentioned, through these applications, we can access professional tools. Indeed, it does allow us to. Holding the device vertically to record horizontally, though it's clearly trimming the sensor. But it is another option that, for example, the iPhone's own camera application does not give you. So it will be through these applications that we can access much more sophisticated tools. You can even have here multi-camera options in conjunction with the iPad. But it strikes me that Apple does not integrate all these professional options in its own native application, but put them in its native application. The video, as expected, will be extremely heavy, yet it incorporates highly advanced and sophisticated capabilities. The camera is capable of recording in an exceptionally high format. For instance, it supports the new Apple log format, which provides a wealth of information. However, it's important to note that the resulting video will be extremely large in size. Nevertheless, it incorporates highly advanced features. Here is a small demonstration of what the video appears like in 4K resolution at 60 frames per second, clearly recorded in HDR format. So, those of you who have an HDR display will indeed be able to see the true effect of the camera. If you don't, you will be viewing a video that has been converted to SDR. Pay attention to how the transition between the cameras is really quite seamless. The video appears to be exceptionally smooth. In this particular instance, if you manage to record with all three cameras maintaining this same high image quality, which is honestly remarkably impressive. From now on, you'll watch the other videos in 4K at 30 frames per second. Check out this one. It was an overcast day, so backlit scenes might seem more intense. However, I love how it smoothly switches between the two cameras. In this case, all three cameras keep a consistent color, though the telephoto is accurate. The main camera might adjust its white balance more drastically in backlit situations. It's important to note that the ultra-wide camera isn't quite as capable. In this test, the shadow areas are a bit darker than we would prefer. Fortunately, we don't observe any aggressive jumps in exposure when a face is present or absent. It might help to prioritize the closest face, but this would result in the background being more overexposed compared to the ultra-wide camera. With the main camera, you'll notice a better balance between the highlights and shadows. I believe the shadows are better balanced. Watching this on HDR monitors will look even more impressive. Here, when the face is closer, it doesn't fully wash out the background, so we'll see better image quality with the main camera. Fortunately, the telephoto camera also handles backlight well. It doesn't completely wash out the background, and there are no harsh changes in exposure intensity. So in dynamic range, the iPhone is one of the best we're going to find for shooting video, with the exception of the ultra-wide camera, which I found a little weak. But for maximum dynamic range, the iPhone has the ability to record in ProRes using log to colorize the video afterwards. This is for the more professional, because even this video I recorded was 23 seconds and weighs 2 GB. It's an exaggerated video size, so if you want to record in that format, you need to buy one of the larger versions, or use an external storage unit for night recording. Note that the ultra-wide camera performs well surprisingly. In photography, I thought it looked worse, whereas in video, it actually performed pretty well compared to other devices. You can still see some of the texture, but when you switch to the main camera, the textures definitely come through much more clearly and distinctly. Therefore, it's crucial to use the main camera in very dark situations, as the ultra-wide camera doesn't perform as well in such conditions. I find it records well, it still doesn't perfectly expose the brighter areas, and if you use the telephoto camera, the opposite is more or less true, as the darker areas will be too dark. There is quite a lot of noise present the iPhone tries to solve, but it will always be difficult to record with good quality. Zooming any camera. So here, I believe one thing I appreciated is that it does indeed utilize the telephoto camera in night scenarios. This is in contrast to other devices that opt to use just digital zoom in very dark scenes. In fact, it appears quite realistic. Trust me, in real life, it was as dark as it looks with the 4x camera, although you might notice a bit more noise than we would have preferred. While using the ultra-wide camera for recording, you will likely need to activate the flashlight. It's worth noting that you cannot toggle the flashlight on or off during the recording process. You have to stop the recording first, which is quite baffling for such a costly device. Notice that the stabilization is adequate. In this case, using the ultra-wide camera is always more convenient, especially when going with. Running with the wider angle is fine, but switching to the main camera stabilizes well when walking. However, it struggles while running. Stabilization is quite a bit more due to the narrower angle it has, although with the telephoto it does not look so spectacular. Especially on this day that was cloudy, maybe on a day with much more light could improve the result a bit, but definitely if you want to record scenes with much more action, you should turn on the action mode. With this mode, the stabilization will be much more intense and aggressive to avoid such marked movements. It works great with the ultra-wide camera. The main camera handles these movements well, even while running, and the telephoto camera performs nicely in this mode too. In fact, if you're recording a moving scene with a telephoto, using this action mode is essential as the improvement is obvious. As for the maximum zoom during video recording, it's important to note that it remains an honest zoom, just as we've observed. In photography, in this particular case, its maximum capability will be 24x. I believe it looks quite good, offering excellent stabilization and smooth transitions between each of the cameras. Unlike many Android devices where photos look great but zoom in video looks poor, here they look similar, offering a consistent experience with natural photo representation. The zoom in video also looks similar, which I appreciate. For focusing, the ultra-wide camera excels at focusing on close objects for macro shots, which is really, the focus responds quickly and accurately even with very smooth movements, and it seems to be controlled quite well. The main camera also reacts well, but obviously you can't have the object too close because its focus is set a bit further away. At times it doesn't seem to be as precise as we might observe with the ultra-wide camera. So in this regard, it isn't the most spectacular camera. However, the most disappointing feature is the telephoto camera, as it cannot focus closely, as demonstrated in the picture. The minimum focusing distance for this camera remains too far, making it quite challenging to capture small objects with it. This is certainly one of its major weaknesses, especially when we consider that other Chinese manufacturers perform better in similar scenes. The iPhone's movie recording mode is really some of the best in the industry. Note the nice blur it has in the background. It's quite natural, you don't notice the edges appearing as cloudy as they do on the majority of Android devices. The video is in K and features HDR. Also, the quality of this is truly exceptional. It's important to point out that even if it loses face detection, the blur effect remains in place. Additionally, this blur effect becomes more pronounced when the person is nearer to the camera and diminishes as they move further away. This adjustment provides a natural simulation akin to recording with high-end professional lenses. Additionally, if it maintains objects in focus, although not with the same level of precision as in photography, you'll particularly notice it in the smaller gaps. However, overall, portrait recording is truly among the best in the industry, since any object in the foreground will attempt to focus on it. Naturally, if the objects are very small with numerous gaps, you'll observe that it appears artificial, but with basic objects, it performs exceptionally well. You can also utilize the 4x lens to capture video with this blur effect in a natural manner. In this scenario, it is in cinema mode, but rather just a standard video recording. However, it uses this focal length, which makes it look quite impressive. It appears quite nice, and the blur effect is well executed. It isn't overly intense like in some other devices, but it does provide a very professional vibe when recording portrait videos. This effect enhances the overall quality, making it feel quite polished and refined. So tiny objects look good since the blur is natural, not artificial. The closer you are to the face, the blur effect appears more intense and professional. Just a fun fact. For slow motion, it can reach 120 frames per second in 4K. When recording in slow motion, the file records at 120 frames per second, but when shared, it exports at 30 frames per second, selecting the part to slow down. However, if you prefer, you have the option to record without using the slow motion mode in 4K at 120 frames per second, ensuring that the file is captured at that speed, and then in post-production you have the ability to... You can capture the exact moment you want. You can also go up to 240 frames per second in full HD for slower motion, though with slightly less detail, and it doesn't record in HDR. The fast motion mode is one of the worst on the iPhone. It's in full HD, and you can go up to 4K. The speed is automatic, and the only positive aspect is its stabilization. However, the overall experience is quite poor, especially when you compare it to what other devices can offer. In reality, it falls short of expectations. Let's take a closer look at the results from the front camera, which records in spectacular HDR and provides very good stabilization. I'd like to remind you that this year you have the ability to record while holding the phone vertically, yet it captures the perspective as if you were holding the device horizontally. This unique feature is something that no other device on the market can do today. While the dynamic range is impressive, it won't be as wide as what we observed with the rear camera. Here, if you notice some areas that appear overexposed or burned, especially in the sky. I should remind you though that this was a particularly cloudy day, so it was indeed a remarkably challenging test. It is clear that it won't be exceptionally outstanding in terms of dynamic range. Take note, for example, of the clouds area, which sometimes appears completely burned out, while at other times it is more noticeable. And well, here you have the result of how it would be to record in 4K 60 frames per second with this camera, so you can see the level of fluidity that can be reached. To make it super, it's beneficial to watch your videos during the night. Keep in mind that the outcome will generally be good. However, the level of detail tends to be slightly lower when compared to the main camera. Notably, if you venture into much darker scenes, you'll observe that it struggles somewhat with managing noise, although it still maintains a decent level of detail. So, when it comes to nighttime use, I would say that it is not the most amazing camera out there. However, I do appreciate how wide you can record, even when you hold the device vertically. This makes it very convenient, but to be honest, the image quality is not really the most advanced available on the market. In these types of challenging scenarios where the lighting is darker, if you get to notice that there is still much room for improvement, this front camera also offers us a slow motion mode, although it cannot be in 4K. But this is a topic that could still be improved in future generations. Additionally, we have the time-lapse mode. I had mentioned earlier that it's among the weakest in the industry because it lacks 4K capability. However, the stabilization is impressive in this mode. The standout feature though is definitely the film recording mode. It once again delivers a stunning bokeh effect in the background. Interestingly, the edges appear somewhat cloudier than with the rear camera, which is unusual as it typically happens the opposite way. Objects that are approximately the same distance from you will remain in focus. However, in this particular case, it seems the camera's autofocus doesn't emphasize these small objects as much. It's more of a mode that focuses on faces. The stabilization is quite impressive, and as I mentioned, for objects that are at the same distance as you, it will maintain focus sufficiently for good quality, as you are aware. A highlight is that with two faces, you can select which to focus on. Tap the screen, or it can autofocus when it detects or loses a face. This feature works well. The iPhone's novelty is its dual camera, offering both good and bad aspects. What I really like is the stabilization and the ultra-rounded corners of this floating window. In that regard, it performs exceptionally well. Additionally, it allows you to switch between the Ultra and other cameras, but you can only switch between two cameras. So, if you start recording by default, it lets you switch between the ultra-wide and the main camera. However, for zooming, it will only use digital zoom, which unfortunately doesn't look very good. What looks absolutely phenomenal is the blur effect that appears when you move the preview, allowing you to position it wherever you desire. I absolutely love that feature. To make it clearer how it behaves, when you're in dual camera mode, you're only going to have the ability to switch between two cameras by default. You can record using the main camera and the ultra-wide. However, if you wish to switch between the main camera and the telephoto, you must switch to the telephoto camera before you begin your recording. While you might start recording directly from the main camera, it's necessary to first switch to the telephoto camera. This process can be somewhat confusing, therefore switching between the 3 different lenses isn't possible when using this recording mode, unlike what other manufacturers permit. However, the benefit here is that the recording quality is in 4K HDR, so it's definitely something impressive, though it still falls short of being perfect. There's room for improvement. For instance, you can't rotate the cameras to have the front as the main and the rear in picture. There are several small things. Improvement is still possible. Within the software, we will discover iOS 26. This particular device is backed by a promise of 7 years of updates, ensuring it remains current at all times. Moreover, it's well known that an iPhone retains its value better than an Android, providing long-term benefits. This operating system features liquid glass, which is Apple's latest design language. Naturally, this is quite appealing due to the way elements are beautifully reflected. You will notice it quite a lot, for instance, in the camera application. Additionally, in some menus, you will observe how the reflections on the edges are made to resemble glass. This means it's not merely a blur effect or something similar, so don't be confused. Liquid glass aims to provide us with this glass-like sensation by generating reflections, especially noticeable on the edges of these elements. For instance, this effect can also be seen on the switches. Take note of the glass effect that is being generated here. It's quite appealing and is certain that many Android manufacturers will begin to replicate this liquid glass effect, which is quite fascinating. However, it's understandable that some individuals may not appreciate the appearance of this effect. So, thankfully, within the accessibility settings, we can discover options to mitigate this effect. For instance, in the display settings, there is an option available to decrease the transparency. And that makes everything you see through the screen much more readable. In fact, the accessibility section is among the most comprehensive parts of Apple, as it includes options that other manufacturers might place in different sections. If you're accustomed to using Android, you might not visit the accessibility section frequently. But with Apple, it is a section filled with numerous options. For instance, as unusual as it might seem, the automatic brightness section is concealed here, whereas in Android it is not so hidden. In the motion section, under accessibility options, you'll find indicators to prevent motion sickness while in a vehicle. Trust me, they're quite helpful. Small points will activate and move on the interface, aiding in avoiding motion sickness. Some Android brands like Honor are adopting this, but most still lack it. In this section, we also discover the hidden setting for back tap. By default, with 2 taps, it will activate the visual intelligence options, allowing you to ask the artificial intelligence questions using the camera. However, you can customize what you want to occur when you triple tap the back of the cell phone, such as opening a quick shortcut, which is certainly useful. Additionally, we come across the range option here as well. Easy, this option reduces screen size by half, and I don't like it. Other Android manufacturers, if they provide you with the option, will allow the screen to be fully minimized both horizontally and vertically. This mode, which many find more comfortable, is something I personally do not like at all. However, I must emphasize that Apple, within its accessibility options, offers features that are quite advanced. For instance, you can control the entire device using just your eyes. This feature is clearly designed for individuals with motor disabilities, and it can definitely be a significant help for them. Actually, it also includes head tracking capabilities. Observe how we can set it up so that when we raise our eyebrows, open our mouth, or smile, it triggers some additional options. These options allow for navigating within the user interface more effectively. In this regard, it is truly an advanced system. Android is far from incorporating all these features, which I emphasize are mainly for people with disabilities, yet can also be useful for hearing impairments. So if a siren alarm goes off, a smoke alarm going off, or the sounds that dogs or cats make with their own noises, or perhaps even recognize the sound of your doorbell ringing. In essence, the iPhone assists in various areas, making it an intelligent and practical device for daily use. Some people. The entire iPhone accessibility section truly deserves a full video dedicated to explaining each point in detail, step by step. All the integrated options it provides, as this is one of its key strengths at the operating system level. I emphasize that Android does not offer as many options as those found on the iPhone in terms of accessibility. But well, let's talk now about another section, that is customization, which we will find, particularly when it comes to wallpaper, as it offers a of this watch, and it also detects the depth. The display is designed to alter the color of the image you've chosen. For instance, we'll modify the image because it automatically provides options to switch between various shades. However, naturally, you have the option to add your own background. In this scenario, I'm going to pick It's going to be on a daily basis or every time you play. Anyway, you can choose a photo carousel from your library, not random ones from manufacturers. I'll pick my highlights. Remember, the watch will have a liquid glass effect, and you can set its duration for an interesting touch behind your face. You also have the option to select whether you prefer a solid fill or a fill that has this glass style. Additions and add various widgets. These include not only system widgets but also third-party widgets, allowing you to always have a quick glance at essential items. For instance, let's assume you're a big fan of Spotify. In that case, you would find a button here that lets you quickly access this application and start listening to the blur effect for the home screen. You can easily switch between different styles and covers that you can set up. I also enjoy the experience of having more shortcuts available on the home screen now. And naturally, the same lock screen can stay in always on display mode, found in the screen section. Here, the manufacturer focuses on this mode as this highlighting the clock. However, you can adjust the settings to keep the picture clear. The always on display, even though it lacks the variety of covers that Android offers, appeals to moods. The home screen offers options. Press and hold icons to see app-specific options without opening the app. You can directly access settings like battery and more. Many apps show options this way. Here, if we press and hold on a different area, remember that we have the ability to access the editing options for customizing all of our icons. We can choose to activate them in a dark mode, or we can select a specific color to tint them with, depending on our preference. In this particular case, unlike the majority of Android devices that offer customization, every icon will be uniformly dyed in that chosen color. You won't notice a splashed effect like you often see on Android devices. So even though Apple tends to arrive late to the party, you must admit that when they do show up, they do it exceptionally well. You can also experience the translucent effect, which gives off this liquid glass sensation. Customization available is quite impressive. Interestingly, it will even detect the iPhone's color to allow you to paint the icons with a single touch in a color that perfectly matches your iPhone. And if you case, you will have the ability to place it, and the iPhone is programmed to recognize the color of your case. This means that with just a simple touch right here, the iPhone will adjust and tint the icons to match the exact color of your case. These are truly small details that contribute to providing a premium experience with the product. Alternatively, you can press this other button to extract the primary color of your wallpaper, which will then tint the rest of the icons accordingly. Naturally, the control center will also be completely customizable. It's important to note that here you can have this button to make it larger. You can rearrange some buttons or even move them around. And keep in mind that you have several panels available. Not only do you have the main panel, but you can also create an entirely new control center customized to your audience in recent generations is impressive. Unlike the past where it was very closed and uniform, now you can personalize it. I really enjoyed this change, and indeed we find ourselves in the same spot. Often imitated but never truly matched. From this island, we can view content that's currently active, such as a music player, for instance. Unlike most Android devices here, by pressing and holding, the controls appear, while a single tap takes you directly to the application. I like that with the dynamic island, developers are using it for background functions. On Android, you don't need it, but on iPhone, finally, we begin to notice something like this happening. For instance, when you publish a story, it is usually necessary to keep the application open until the video has completely uploaded. However, now with the dynamic island, you can simply imagine you want to publish, and once you do that, you're all set. You can then exit and observe as the task continues to run in the background over here. Till recently, this wasn't possible, but few developers use this feature for background tasks. It's great, and I hope more developers use it. One thing I dislike about iOS is having to keep the app open to avoid task cancellation. We have several features for the dynamic island besides the player. For instance, we might have some controls available when we begin screen recording. You can notice a countdown, and there's also a button to stop the recording. Similarly, if we are just recording audio or if we have the flashlight turned on, you'll see that this option will show up. This feature, by the way, allows us to choose how wide we want the illumination to spread. It's really quite impressive in terms of the effects it offers, making the dynamic island a very appealing feature. Among the most notable features of the iPhone are the focus modes. These modes provide you with the capability to customize your experience by altering not just the notifications you receive, but also determining which ones can disrupt you and which ones cannot. This allows for a highly personalized interaction with your device, tailoring it to suit your specific needs and preferences. What I love most is the time on screen section. It's more advanced than Android, allowing us to set usage times to avoid being phone slaves. Set app limits. Notably for parents, several restrictions can be set. To ensure the device isn't used for unintended purposes, you can meticulously control and restrict which applications and functions are accessible to minors, allowing for a very detailed level of customization and limitation. Although, of course, it would not be so advisable to give this cell phone to a minor, but, well, I mention it because in the cheaper iPhones as well, these choices are also available for you, and are consistently quite prominent. Nevertheless, I've already highlighted several aspects that I adore when compared to an Android. However, Android provides some other features as well. For instance, Android does not disrupt you in such an intrusive manner on your configuration screen to present all the services that come with additional costs. Android is capable of running apps in both split screen mode and floating screen mode, something the iPhone is unable to do. As I mentioned earlier, Android significantly improves the execution of background tasks and offers a wide variety of other options. However, I just wanted to briefly comment on this topic in a nutshell. So, now let's discuss a little more about artificial intelligence, an area where Apple encounters one of its most significant weaknesses. Its AI functions are still in the beta phase. Fortunately, you can already use them in Spanish, but they still don't function perfectly. Allow me to describe each of these features briefly. For instance, in any text field, you can press and hold to open the typing tools that are designed to assist us. To alter the text, to edit, revise, or modify the formatting. Then here you can describe what you want to adjust, and afterwards you're going to transform it. In fact, you could also summarize, extract key points, extract a list, or even convert it to a table. So let's do a quick experiment. I'm going to click Compose, and as you can see in this case, some tools connect directly to GPT chat. So let's compose something quick, a warning message to all ISA Marcial members. Currently, I'm recording the iPhone 17 Pro Max review, and it requests a confirmation message. This should be a highly formal text. As you can see, we just click the insert button to place it into the text field, and that's all. Likewise, you can copy this text and change its tone, such as giving it a friendly tone. Watch as it changes and provides a proposal that we can replace using this button, then submit whatever you need. So, in a way, these are tools that you can utilize whenever you are typing. They help to make everything more concise and give it a more professional tone. Or, as I often mention, they allow you to extract the key points from the entire text and easily replace them. Therefore, these writing tools still work effectively, and in this situation, I believe we don't encounter any disadvantages. Within Apple's Mail app itself, where you can include your various email accounts, we will also have numerous options available to prioritize specific messages, provide you with intelligent reply suggestions, or even summarize the content of emails for you. A similar will happen inside a message if you use that app. And regarding Siri, it has a new animation. Note that it gives it a very nice effect. That will be the only good thing about Siri in this generation, because really, if you ask it sophisticated questions, it will connect with GPT chat. But Siri doesn't have such smart features. For example, give me a list of the top 3 most outstanding features of the iPhone 17 Pro Max. As you can see, it says, I have no elements. It doesn't understand very well. It didn't even ask me to connect to GPT chat this time. There are other times where it does give you the suggestion to connect to GPT chat to get more information, but Siri has really stayed in the past. It doesn't work very well. The only thing I could point out to you is that you can double tap on the bottom to call Siri now through the keyboard and ask her for any kind of request. Even when you're using any other app, you can perform the same gesture to begin chatting with Siri. Within Safari, there are also new enhancements related to artificial intelligence. Take note that if we navigate over here to the Reader tool, it now includes an option to summarize, providing a synthesized version of what the article conveys. Additionally, it will have the capability to transcribe your voice recordings. And it can transcribe voice recordings, letting you read what was said. You can also search text. A key feature is it works offline, no cloud needed. The Playground app is new for generating AI images. When you generate an image, it provides the option to include ingredients. Like here, it suggests adding a character from my photo gallery, such as my face. Then you can explore various categories. For instance, we will choose adventure, and simultaneously, we will add the joyful face. And as I mentioned, once you add all these ingredients, the device automatically processes a photograph using various styles, perhaps to embellish certain moments. And here you have several options to choose from. In fact, this Playground feature is also integrated within the messaging app, Notes, and also within Freeform, which serves as a mind mapping tool. This so you can generate images quickly without having to switch applications. Within the Notes application, we also find Apple Intelligence functions, not just the basic writing tools. In the Notes application, for instance, we could attempt to create an image like this. And let's imagine this represents a tree. You simply hold it down and then instruct it to add to Playground. You can describe what is happening here for it to process. Transform the green leaf tree and we will just wait for it to complete its task, and that's it. You can easily replace it. Therefore, if you enjoy taking notes and drawing, all of a sudden, this might be a great solution. Although, of course, this would be more attractive when used on an iPad, because in this case, they do not support any type of stylus. Within the gallery, we also have artificial intelligence, for example, to perform direct searches. For instance, let's type in the word robot and wait. In this case, it performs the search instantly, finding all the images where that term appears. The same thing can happen with tree or any other term. The reality is that the search process is quite rapid in this regard, providing a very positive experience. For instance, I'm going to conduct a search for Bolito to check if anything relevant appears. In this scenario, it does bring up related content. Although my library of photographs isn't extensive, it certainly proves to be quite helpful. Naturally, we will also discover the object eraser feature within the editor. It shows up here, but honestly, it isn't particularly intelligent to mention. For instance, we'll enclose what we want to remove, in this case the robot, but it detected it well. I try again, and it still doesn't detect it well. It's suggesting I delete the background. It seems to struggle with detecting what I want to erase. Let's try another picture to show the result. There, it detected it and did well, but I insist it doesn't always perform optimally. In complex tests, most other devices always outperform it, which are significantly more advanced. When it comes to removing objects, the truth is that it performs exceptionally well. Extremely, incredibly bad. Regardless of how much patience you wish to have with it, it simply will not function at the same level as other tools. As I demonstrated to you just a moment ago, we also have visual intelligence capabilities such as holding down on the camera button to ask questions or extract information from whatever you are observing through the camera, or even look things up directly in GPT chat. Within the notifications, we also come across Apple Intelligence tools such as prioritizing the most important notifications. Additionally, it provides you with a summary of the notifications. So if it's a lengthy message, you see a more concise version. Naturally, you have the option to choose the application categories you wish to summarize, or if you prefer not to summarize anything at all, that's entirely up to you. When taking screenshots, we will also discover some Apple Intelligence features. These allow us to directly inquire ChatGPT about something present in the screenshot. Additionally, you can search for similar images related to what is displayed in the screenshot using both Google and Pinterest. These are two additional functions that can be quite useful for exploring more content and expanding your search. Actually, you are able to dial. When using Apple Intelligence, what exactly do you want to focus on if you prefer not to have it analyze every single thing on the screen? And lastly, there's something else that I found quite fascinating. In the call settings, you'll discover some valuable tools. One of these is the call waiting assistant detection, which is extremely helpful for those times when you're speaking with a call center, and they put on some background music, leaving you waiting for hours. You can move on to other tasks, and the iPhone will notify you when it's finally time to answer. It's incredibly useful. Additionally, we have a live voicemail feature, so the device will attempt to take a message for you, and you can actually read it while you're receiving the call. But let's perform a demonstration. For instance, notice that here is the option. And let's proceed to select voicemail. The person you are trying to reach is unavailable. Please record your message after the tone. You can hang up when finished. I am conducting a test. I am unsure if you are able to hear me, but I urgently need you to return my call, please. I am not certain if you are very busy, yet it is quite urgent. As you can observe, at this moment the iPhone is displaying what the other person is saying, and I still have the ability to choose whether to answer the call or to completely stop the call. So it's somewhat like a smart mailbox, which can definitely prove to be quite useful. Additionally, you will receive both the recording and the transcript completed. Therefore, if you're extremely busy and end the call, the device can still jot down the notes for you. I believe that's an incredibly cool feature. Actually, there's another similar feature that's quite interesting as well. You can activate it right here in the call filter section. You can automatically configure it to ensure that no unknown number is able to interrupt your calls. This feature is extremely useful for eliminating all the spam you might be receiving these days. Additionally, there is a section that allows you to filter unknown numbers. For instance, if someone who is not saved in your contacts calls you, you have the option to select that absolutely nothing occurs. Alternatively, you can choose to have Siri inquire about the purpose of the call, acting like a personal secretary for you. And then, you have the option to decide whether or not you wish to answer. Additionally, there is the silent option, where almost all calls are automatically directed to this alternative mailbox. Let's try a test call from another phone to see the outcome. Hello, please leave your name along with the reason for your call, and I will verify if this person is available for you. Hi, this is Isa, and I have been trying to get in touch with you for quite some time now. I am unsure if you are testing your cell phone or what exactly is happening because you haven't been responding to me. I really need to call you urgently. Thank you very much, Isa. Please stay on the line. As you realize, it's quite similar to what I had already shown you before, but in this case it performs the task automatically. Moreover, if you definitely did not answer the call, you will also receive a priority notification with the transcript of the message that they left for you. Let's discuss security in more detail now. In this instance, we will be using Face ID as the main method for unlocking the device. This involves facial recognition technology utilizing a highly advanced sensor. This technology is designed to work exceptionally well and provides a reliable and secure way to unlock your device. It ensures that your personal information remains protected while offering convenience and efficiency in everyday use. Face detection can be tricky with similar faces. It lacks a fingerprint reader, which I wanted for dual options, but they chose to rely entirely on Face ID. In this particular situation, the device itself incorporates a direct protection against theft, ensuring that your data remains even more secure. This is designed to bolster the security of password changes for your Apple accounts, among other important details. It appears that Apple is very attentive to these security measures. As you may already know, the iPhone can still be traced even if it is turned off, which is one of its notable features. The device includes a specialized password application that you can access using Face Unlock. This allows you to store and synchronize your passwords not just with Mac and iPhone, but also with Windows on a PC. With this manager, you can autofill forms directly. It functions smoothly and effectively without a doubt. In fact, there are several categories available, which makes it significantly easier to log into various services. Regarding privacy issues, it's important to remember that this device offers a feature allowing you to restrict access to specific apps. By pressing and holding on an app, you can select the option to request Face ID for access. Interestingly, you have the ability to hide the shortcut while still requiring Face ID when someone attempts to open the app. However, keep in mind that it won't stay completely hidden, as it is located in the app drawer, right at the bottom where it can be seen. To open hidden apps, verify with Face ID first, then access the apps you've blocked. You want to unlock them, you simply need to press and hold the button once more, and then select the option indicating that you do not wish to request Face ID. Unfortunately, this device does not come with an integrated kids mode, which would allow you to quickly decide which apps are permitted for use and set specific time limits for shorter sessions when you lend the cell phone to a child. Therefore, it is crucial that you personally establish some restrictions. This process is somewhat complicated compared to other cell phones that do include a built-in child mode for convenience. The device also includes an airtight mode designed for individuals who suspect they are victims of a cyber attack. This allows them to enhance their protection, which is quite interesting. However, it generally lacks a wide array of security and privacy tools. Unlike several Android manufacturers, who offer a special section for secure folders, this device does not. For instance, here. Within the Files app, there isn't really an option available to hide or protect particular files. However, in the Gallery app, you will indeed find that specific option to hide or secure certain files. For instance, you simply press and hold to choose the option to hide it. Then it will move to the hidden photo album. To access this album, it will definitely require a Face ID check before displaying the content. While it may not have as many tools as Android, I believe it provides a sufficient amount of functionality for you. A positive experience overall. As I was mentioning earlier, in the event that you lose your phone, you have the ability to locate it using a map. Even if the device has already been powered off, you still retain the possibility to track it down. In this sense, the experience is much more advanced and sophisticated compared to what different manufacturers offer on Android. The battery has an unofficial capacity of 588 meters. Apple doesn't share this info specific, but in this case, if it is a battery that increases compared to the last generation significantly, and in fact, in our tests, this evolution was noticed. For example, we ran continuous Antutu benchmarks with the screen brightness at maximum and also the flashlight on, and this had a consumption of 20% in an hour, so with this rate would reach 5 hours. The previous generation achieved a duration of 4 hours and 16 minutes, so yes, we'll see a big boost in battery life even for demanding tasks. Compared to other Android devices, this phone seems quite impressive and better than many devices. In fact, during our test playing YouTube videos at 50% screen brightness, it lasted 25 hours and 10 minutes. Simply outstanding, surpassing all Android devices we've tested. So far, this is the best cell phone battery we have come across. Keep in mind that it now offers support for 40 watts charging as well, so it's definitely spectacular, and even if you come to need the power saving mode, you can enable it. It must be said that it does not have an ultra saving mode as if we see in some Android cell phones, but it brings something called adaptive saving, which through artificial intelligence will try to manage resources well, and I think it does it quite well. That's why we have seen such a good result in the YouTube video playback test. Regarding the charge, it supports 40 watts. So if you had a 20 watts charger from the last generation and you want to enjoy the more powerful charge, you need to buy another charger or use a Mac charger, because in my case, I used the 140 watts charger, and look at the graph. The first few minutes, if it reached a power very close to 40, but it is only the initial stage. In my test with 15 minutes of charging, it reached 35%. That is 5% more than the last generation, while in 30 minutes, it reached 62%. That's 7% more than the previous generation. The complete charge was accomplished in an hour and 20 minutes, which is significantly quicker compared to the previous generation that required nearly 2 hours. Consequently, the iPhone charges more rapidly and the battery lifespan is notably prolonged. This enhancement is substantial and quite impressive. Keep in mind that it also features wireless charging with MagSafe utilizing integrated magnets. You don't necessarily need a special case for the magnets to function properly. You can actually use chargers that are compatible with the G protocol. Or you could also consider using Apple's own MagSafe chargers. In our test, we specifically used the MagSafe charger in combination with Mag's 35-watt charging adapter. In 15 minutes, it reached 10%. In 30 minutes, it went up to 21%, and it fully charged in 2 hours and 50 minutes. Honestly, wireless charging isn't the fastest we've seen, and there's still work to be done to protect battery life. Check if it has smart charging for long charges or a charge lock to set a limit. I believe that both of these options significantly contribute to maintaining and taking care of the lifespan in an effective way. When it comes to connectivity, this device offers support for both 5G networks and 7 Wi-Fi networks. It's truly a device that downloads content at an impressively fast speed, regardless of what you're downloading. Fortunately, you have the option to choose which applications will utilize your mobile data and which ones will be restricted to using Wi-Fi for internet access. It's important to note that in countries like Mexico and the United States, among others, the device no longer includes a physical SIM card. Now, to add a data and calling plan, you'll need to scan a QR code or get an eSIM service from your phone company. There are several companies that will offer the service to transfer your number from a physical SIM card to a virtual one. With this, you can add more than just two eSIMs. However, you can only use two eSIMs simultaneously. Therefore, the experience you will have is essentially going to be quite similar to what we have already observed. In the classic version where you might have one, this allows up to two lines to work simultaneously, combining a physical SIM with an eSIM, and in this instance, both will be eSIM. This device includes a new Apple wireless in-chip that combines Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 6 connectivity, and a new TREP connectivity, which will be utilized in the future. Additionally, it features NFC for using Apple Pay and facilitating interactions between Apple devices, but it doesn't support other accessories. It also integrates the second-generation ultra-wideband chip, will enable us, among other capabilities, to locate an AirTag and inform you whether your lost item is situated to the right, to the left, or in a different direction altogether. It will also integrate satellite connectivity, which is undoubtedly one of the most attractive features of this cell phone. The last generation was only available in the United States at its launch. This generation is already available in Mexico as well since its launch, so it can be very useful in some natural disasters where the phone is not available in the United States. The antennas fall off, but you can still send messages, your location, and other emergency functions to loved ones. This is a crucial feature not seen in Android devices outside China. It lacks FM radio, but includes USB 3 for fast data transfer. You can project the screen with an HDMI adapter, but only in mirrored mode, unlike other Android brands offering advanced desktop modes. You could also wirelessly project the screen to a Mac or even to an AirPlay-compatible TV. Make sure to check this, because if your TV doesn't support AirPlay, you won't be able to project your screen content. Naturally, it also includes Apple CarPlay for connecting to your car screen. Regarding sensors, it has everything you might need, including an accelerometer, gravity sensor, linear acceleration sensor, orientation sensor, and gyroscope in. Finally, I think it has everything in that sense, with the exception of infrared, that if we see in other devices to use them as a universal remote control, that is something that is not available here. Apple's ecosystem is undoubtedly one of its main strengths. However, at the same time, something that might intimidate some users, because even though they offer a really excellent and extensive catalog of numerous devices such as the iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, AirPods, HomePod, Apple TV, AirTag, Vision Pro, and many others, it will not be compatible with devices from other brands. This is due to the fact that Apple's technologies, including AirDrop continuity camera, nearby devices, Apple Home, and various others, are designed to function exclusively among their own products. The interconnectivity and interaction level among them is excellent. However, you need to invest a significant amount if you want to fully enjoy the ecosystem. Apple provides numerous services like Apple Music, Apple TV, and other subscriptions for games, fitness, podcast, map, health, wallet, App Store. To sum up, Apple is a company that has established a vast ecosystem empire, not just with physical products, but also through a range of services it can provide to you. However, I must emphasize, if you wish to work freely with other devices, you will encounter numerous challenges. Let's evaluate the app opening speed of the iPhone 17 Pro Max. This device integrates the processor to Pro, which is built on a 3nm process. Its two most powerful cores can run up to 4.26 Tz. Additionally, it comes with 12 GB of RAM, and the most basic configuration offers 256 GB of storage. As you can observe, it took an average of 18 seconds to open each app, demonstrating that it is indeed a super fast all-round flagship with excellent optimization. Remember, Apple lacks true multitasking. Apps in the background are slightly suspended, so if uploading a file, you must stay in the app. Unlike Android, a different system. This helps Apple manage power well and gives a sense of good multitasking. Note that even here, we restarted the app. It doesn't seem to be the most advanced in this regard, despite the fact that it integrates 12 gigabytes of memory, random access memory or RAM. It's important to note that in this instance, we're attempting to toggle between various applications. Overall, it appears to function properly. However, in my opinion, it might not be the most impressive or remarkable performance we've witnessed so far. Especially also due to the sensation I often experience, that when I return to check the list of recent apps, it consistently remains at the very top. This feeling persists, making me think about it frequently, and it somehow seems to stick with me, as if it's always there, lingering at the top. The feeling is a bit strange for me while testing it, but anyway, that's just... It's about the feeling. The main point I can clearly share with you is that this device is incredibly fluid and extremely fast. Now take a look at how it performs, for instance, when scrolling through Pinterest. You will definitely notice that we experience exceptionally smooth and fluid scrolling. It performs remarkably well. Additionally, in applications that demand high consumption and intensive graphics processing, you'll observe that it also performs in an exceptionally smooth and efficient manner. The truth is, it's truly one of the most advanced devices I have ever seen in this regard. The overall experience is very impressive, as you practically witness real-time processing happening before your eyes. It stands out as one of the best I've encountered in the entire industry. It definitely boasts a significant amount of graphics power, which is exceptionally well utilized by the high level of optimization present in this device. It's undoubtedly the smoothest experience we've observed in the industry when testing these kinds of effects. Finally, let's check the export time for this video. Click on the Save Video option and start processing. Remember, we're using clips recorded in 4K on this device, with HDR resulting in a total duration of 1 minute once combined. And there you have it. It took almost 40 seconds, which is quite long, but keep in mind these are HDR videos. Here we're using iMovie, the iPhone's app, for basic video editing. For games. Now, we will find ourselves with an application designed to give us direct access to the content that you already have installed, so you can continue playing. Additionally, from here, you can access Apple Arcade with your subscription, allowing you to explore and enjoy a wide catalog of games. You can also connect with your friends here, or finally, access the library of your own games and much more. Therefore, we have, without a doubt, a much more sophisticated and enhanced experience compared to what we had before. It's important to note that when you open a game, it will automatically activate the focus or game mode. This mode essentially may enable certain do not disturb options. However, it doesn't have as advanced management features as seen in other Android devices. The configuration of this game mode is quite basic, allowing us to only restrict some residual applications. So while it provides some level of focus, it's not as comprehensive as other systems. That's basically it. It's not very sophisticated. It lacks a frame counter. And there are no tools available to map the volume buttons or the camera button to any virtual buttons. Additionally, it doesn't have a color inverter or a voice modifier, along with numerous other options that are commonly found in the Android world. So I believe that at the software level, the gaming experience is quite lacking. This is especially true when you compare it to gaming specialists such as Red Magic and other manufacturers. However, in its favor, it must be mentioned that it includes a vapor chamber. Although this is not the first instance of a phone incorporating a vapor chamber, in this case, Apple refers to a sophisticated system. Here, the vapor chamber is laser welded to the aluminum unibody, which enables the cooling to be highly advanced, and we'll observe shortly. Now, let's proceed to the tests. We'll begin with Call of Duty, which is set to very high graphics quality and a high frame rate by default. Even when we increase the quality to the maximum, we can still maintain a frame rate that can reach up to the maximum level. However, if we increase the rate to the ultra level, the resolution will decrease to a medium level. This is similar to what occurs in other flagship devices. Interestingly, now it does permit us to use all the effects simultaneously, which is different from last year when one of the options was disabled. This means the processor will now deliver the maximum power. So initially, we prioritized the graphic quality. And watch. Even during screen recording, the device has continued to perform remarkably well. Performs well in managing its temperature. However, while we are recording the screen, if we happen to notice any loss of frames that we truly did not anticipate in this game, especially since it is not yet as exaggeratedly complex as some other games that we will be running, then that affects the experience for the most demanding gamers. We'll still not be fully satisfied for most users. Interestingly, there was an unusual peak at 77 frames per second, which was the sole instance where it surpassed 60 frames per second. It appears to be a rare occurrence, but nonetheless it is displayed in the graph. In general, the experience is quite smooth. However, I must emphasize that if you decide to record the screen, you might encounter some occasional freezes. These are not comfortable at all for the most demanding gamers. It's peculiar because the device wasn't overheating or anything like that. The temperature was well managed. Therefore, we prioritized. Regarding the refresh rate, it averaged 119 frames per second, peaked at 120, and dipped to a low of 106, providing a very fluid experience. While recording the screen, the temperature reached 39 degrees Celsius. However, after playing a bit longer, it dropped to 38.9 degrees Celsius, a 1 degree decrease. This suggests it has an excellent cooling system and the vapor chamber seems to help significantly. Yet even with screen recording, we still noticed brief freezing moments which are unacceptable for such an expensive device. Fortunately, you'll observe that the quality of the screen recording is quite impressive and very good, higher than Full HD with 60 frames per second, which is different from other devices that make screen recording much simpler. Then, we played Genshin Impact, which by default comes in high quality. We push it to the max, considering the iPhone is the only device with 120 frames per second for this game. We aim to test its ability to deliver a smooth experience. And the truth is that for gamers, the experience will not be as enjoyable. Even though there are 120 frames per second available, it will actually fluctuate quite a bit. When recording the screen again, you will notice these cuts in the frames, which is not something enjoyable at all. If you are someone who is interested in recording gameplays, you might not have a very pleasant experience in this aspect. However, if you do not record gameplays, I believe you could end up having a somewhat better feeling. But definitely, even though it shows you 120 frames available, it's not truly a device that can maintain them at 100% stability. Actually, when recording the screen, if the cuts are too pronounced, you can definitely notice them. Even if you don't have a particularly keen eye for frames per second, you will still see them clearly. It's truly a device that promised a lot in terms of power. However, in this particular game, it didn't quite meet our expectations. When not recording the screen, the lowest peak was 61. Which remains impressively fluid. But when it comes to recording the screen, that's when it experiences much more noticeable cuts. Next, we tried playing Kark Street, which by default is already set with the graphics at the highest level possible. The sole action we took was to remove the cap on the frames per second, allowing them to run without any restrictions. When we weren't recording the screen, the lowest drop was to 28 frames per second. This was quite unexpected from this device, as we anticipated a much smoother and more consistent performance. Consequently, you can expect to see a bit more fluctuation in the frame rates here as well. Once we start recording the screen again, the experience becomes quite poor and disappointing. So it's confusing. It confirms that for recording gameplay specifically, it's a very bad device. But for gaming without recording the screen, it can still give you a good feeling. It appears to be a problem with software optimization. Interestingly, the device itself isn't overheating or experiencing any similar issues. You can observe that the graphics are quite detailed, with textures and reflections looking impressive. Everything visually looks fantastic, and the visual experience is excellent. The temperature control is also working very well. However, for some unknown reason, it doesn't provide an exceptionally smooth user experience. Next, we played Golpe Scattering Waves, which is among the more intense games. Naturally, we altered the default balance setting to focus on quality. We increased it to 60 frames per second and adjusted all settings to their maximum levels to test its capabilities. Interestingly, this game appears to be better optimized for some reason. It's a game that often struggles on Android, but here it ran smoothly. Interestingly, even when you're recording the screen, you might not notice these low peaks at all. As we observed in the previous games, the feeling can vary quite a bit depending on the content you prefer to engage with the most. If you're an avid fan of this game, you will find the experience to be incredibly smooth, even when you're recording the screen. However, I can't guarantee that it will provide the same smooth experience for all other types of content. Once again, the temperature control is what really stands out to me, because other Android devices playing this game can reach temperatures of up to perhaps 47 degrees Celsius in the worst case scenario. In this place, it actually remained under 40 degrees Celsius. The truth is that it manages the temperature quite effectively. However, when you hold it in your hand, it might give you the impression that it feels warmer than it actually should be. Possibly because it is able to extract the heat more rapidly to the aluminum body. Next, we played Zenless Zone Zero, Once again, with the settings adjusted to the highest possible quality for each parameter at 60 frames per second to evaluate what the device can handle, even though it is usually recommended to play using the default settings. And again, the sensation seems to me to be a positive one for some users, but it remains to be seen for others. In other words, if you believe this device would provide you with the same or even a superior experience to that of a Red Magic, which is 100% dedicated to gaming, then it's not quite the case in reality. Recording the screen once more, you might notice some low peaks that are not entirely 100% pleasant. However, if you are not among the most demanding gamers, it still provides a certain sensation. Fluid, and what truly stands out the most without any doubt is once again the excellent control it maintains over the temperature. This is a device designed to provide you with a consistently high performance, maintaining excellent quality throughout extended gaming sessions. Unlike previous generations, where the device's performance would drop as it heated up during play, even causing the screen brightness to dim, this no longer occurs with the current generation. The temperature management is outstanding, ensuring that performance remains stable. However, despite these advancements, we are still noticing some. There are low peaks in the frames per second, which are not enjoyable for those who are the most demanding. After that, we had the opportunity to play several games from the AAA catalog that this device offers, featuring graphics on par with console-level quality. Interestingly, it appears to function as a sort of official Apple emulator. It's not an emulator app per se, but the on-screen controls resemble those you'd find in an emulator. We began by playing Resident Evil 4, adjusting the graphics to a notably high level. This type of game, with its impressive graphics, truly stands out. At the console level, they are so sophisticated that they won't run at over 30 frames per second. However, it's important to note that as of now, no Android device offers simple execution for these types of content. Indeed, while you might be able to access these games through certain emulators and other methods, it is a highly intricate and complicated process. Apple simplifies this significantly by making these games readily available in the App Store, which is why we are motivated to play them. Although there might be methods to run some of this content directly on Android or similar games, they demand a setup process that is incredibly complex and considerably more time-consuming. This game appeared quite impressive. The graphics looked absolutely spectacular, especially in terms of shadow casting, lighting effects, and much more. Moreover, it managed to control its temperature quite well. However, it was limited to running at 30 frames per second. Next, we tried playing Resident Evil 7, once again adjusting the graphics to a certain level. High as it allows, but still limited to 30 frames per second. Again, the controls resemble emulator controls, but graphics resembling console graphics, which is the highlight on Android. Not yet able to enjoy a catalog that is available in the same manner on the Google Play Store. After that, we played Alien Isolation. Here, you can observe the graphic configuration it has, which is somewhat different from what we typically see in other games. Honestly, this game lacks a lot of action at this particular stage where we need it to run, but the reality is that the graphics appear quite impressive. With very fine and detailed textures, great reflections and more running at about 40 frames per second. The truth is that this one indeed runs a bit more smoothly. It looks quite good, and it serves as more or less a demonstration of the impressive graphics power that this chip possesses. Essentially, it is a showcase of the capabilities that this processor offers because, for instance, take a look at the reflections visible on the floor during interaction. The truth is that it appears incredibly advanced in this regard. Finally, we proceed to run Assassin's Creed Mirage, and note that we carefully select. The graphics quality is absolutely the highest possible. Although it doesn't offer a lot of options to move or change, it once again serves as a demonstration of tremendous graphics capabilities. It looks exaggeratedly good. If you enjoy this type of game, you can play it on your iPhone. It resembles console graphics limited to 30 frames per second, but looks great with impressive detail. This game isn't on Android, showing how many developers prioritize iPhone releases. If you enjoy this type of novel, take note. Say and enjoy these games before any other iPhone device will be the right choice for you. On Android, we are still waiting for the game catalog to reach such a high level of detailed and brutal graphics. Although, as you noticed, it's limited to 30 frames per second, it is definitely something that we still cannot enjoy on Android. Therefore, this extensive size of the game catalog for iPhone is one of its major strengths when compared to Android. In conclusion, like any good iPhone, this one performs well in most tasks. However, there are still some things it doesn't do. If you're part of the Apple ecosystem and have always used iPhones, this device will be an interesting upgrade, especially with its improved telephoto camera zoom. Far superior to the previous generation, the evolution is really impressive. However, when you compare it to the zoom capabilities of the Android Ultra flagships, it might still be somewhat lacking. Even though Apple prioritizes a more natural zoom over the artificial zoom seen in some Android cases, as I mentioned, it is indeed a very good flagship. The design is nice, aesthetics are subjective, it's durable, and the screen is great. The standout is the battery life, it's impressive. Forget the myths about iPhone battery, it's amazing. The sound is excellent, and as for cameras, iPhone always delivers quality. While I wouldn't claim it's the top camera available, it likely offers more professional video recording tools than any other device. When it comes to the operating system level, there's a particular area where I find myself not quite satisfied with the iPhone. It's for this reason that I personally choose not to use an iPhone. To illustrate with a practical example, if I wish to upload files to Google Drive, I am required to keep the Google Drive application open the entire time. I am unable to perform any other tasks on the iPhone simultaneously because it lacks genuine multitasking capabilities. This is just one example of the aspects that tend to frustrate me the most about using an iPhone. So, as I'm explaining to you, if you're accustomed to using an iPhone already, that's not likely to appear as a disadvantage for you. However, if you're transitioning from an Android device, and you're contemplating switching to an iPhone, there might be certain details that you could potentially miss, which could be significant, but this will largely depend on the kind of user you are. The reality of the situation is that it is indeed a highly competitive device, given the excellent quality it provides. Additionally, we should also take into account that Apple is a brand known for offering exceptional post-purchase service. For sale, if you encounter any issues or need details, rest assured they will resolve it without hassle, especially at Apple's distributors. For now, we've reached the end of this review. If you enjoyed it, feel free to let us know, and we'll see you next time.